Welcome to the Community Hotline for the community, by the community. I'm your host, Bob Fang, and today we have Hanna.
Hi everyone, I'm Hannah.
Welcome. Why don't you introduce yourself?
My name is Hannah, and I am a 26-year-old nurse.
I love that. Tell us, two truths, one lie.
Oh, two truths, one lie. Okay, you did this before, and I was like, I have to think of it. Okay, two truths, one lie. I have never traveled alone. I have won 20 free burritos from Chipotle. And I am the only child.
Only child.
Is that my lie or my true? Do you think that's
Your
my
lie. Is that
Yeah,
your
that's
lie?
my lie.
Yeah. I think also you gave it away because you just mentioned your sister earlier.
Oh, did I? Yeah,
It's okay though. It's okay. When did you win your burritos? What was that?
funny. In middle school, I won a Super Bowl drawing for like 20 free burritos and 10 bags of chips. And then last year for Nurses Week, I won 52 free entrees. I got Chipotle for a year for Nurses Week. I like won that. So I don't know why I keep getting free Chipotle and I never want to see Chipotle again in my life.
What are you like their most? Are you the most favorite nurse at work?
It was like a thing where you would like tag your favorite nurse or something, and my friends tagged me, and then they like picked like a random account, and I guess I got picked, and so yeah.
Okay, I like that. Speaking of nurses, is it true that hospitals in America are run by the Filipino mob?
Oh my god, we were just talking about this today in the morning. Partly, I think at the hospital I work at, over 70% of the nurses are Filipino. Yeah,
Okay,
we
and
got strong worth ethic.
how does that work? Well, we'll just go into the first topic, which is money, and we'll talk about the business of hospitals real quick.
Alrighty.
So yeah, so how does that work? You know, what's like is there politicking going on in the hospitals, or how does it? Yeah.
There's definitely politics, like any job, but specifically healthcare, being that the way a hospital makes money or a physician makes money is all dependent on billing codes. And so when you first start off as a nurse, you don't really know the difference of like certain orders, observation, like versus like admitting. But then as you get a little more seasoned, you start to see certain orders that you're like, like, is this necessary? Is this patient really need this procedure done? Or is it just to add another billing code to insurance? So that's stuff you pick up on later because you're learning so much in the first year as a nurse that you don't have the mental capacity to pay attention to like billing codes. But that's definitely something that I want to like learn more about to see if there's ways to like minimize it or like ask questions as a patient because I feel like you're never allowed to go. You go to the doctor or go to the hospital. You can't say, "Oh, how much is this going to cost me?" And even if you do ask how much is it going to cost me, they're going to tell you, I don't know, like it depends on your insurance. Like I have PPO insurance and like a month ago I actually passed out at the dentist and he called 911 and I like went to the hospital and then I got hit with almost a $4,000 bill after insurance. And I was just like I'm so confused like I didn't if had I known it was going to be $2,000 for an ambulance ride, I would have like not passed out. So yeah, there's definitely politics.
What can you tell us a personal story about this billing code situation?
Let's see, personal story. I think like you start to pick up on like for example, like an observation class for certain patients. I think depending on what type of admission it is, let's say in the hospital, it bills differently, and so that's something a patient really has no control over or is aware of. Um,
You mean like if they come into the emergency room or the ambulance or they just
yeah, like,
or
let's say they come into the ED and they're, like, not super critical, but, like, they might wanna keep an eye on this patient. There's different types of admitting codes that they'll use. So depending on which one they use, it it's a higher markup for insurance, and then at the end of the day, they make their money from insurance, but then who pays insurance? You do. So,
got it, got it, got it. Um, and then tell us, what is money?
what is money? Money is time, and time is money. I think like from your 20s to your 30s, money means very different things. Like I remember when I was in college, in my like early 20s, and like $20 was just like a large amount for me. I'm like, oh, like, damn, this is 20 bucks. Like, here I am working 3 jobs full time in school. And like, I'm like, man, this 20 bucks. Like, am I really, you start to really like fixate on prices and like other options. And you have necessarily more time in that time and less money. And then once you start working, you kind of go from like making minimum wage. If you're working a job that you're getting paid well, like, if for nursing, that's the type of job where once you start working, you're jumping like your income like pretty significantly, like within the first year. So you go from like overthinking 20 bucks to being like, oh yeah, like guac is extra, sure, like throw it on. Like I have so much like disposable income because you're not used to like the making that much. Or you'd be like, oh, there's no way I'm gonna postmate this. It's gonna cost me an extra $15 to postmate this. I'd rather just get in the car and go. But then when you're like working, you realize you really don't have much time and you start valuing your time more than your money in certain cases. So you're like, you know what? No, I'm tired. I'm exhausted. I had a bad day. I'm going to spend the 15 bucks for my comfort. And you're like, and I'm okay with that. So it all depends on like where you are on the spectrum in life?
Got it, got it. How much does a nurse make out of school?
As a new grad in California, which keep in mind is the highest paying state for nurses, you can make anywhere from like $35 an hour. I've seen up to like $78 an hour, depending on where you're working.
Wow, that's a big jump. That's like
Yeah, it's
so
a big
you go from minimum wage like $12 an hour all the way to 35 to $70 an hour. That's a huge jump in income.
It is a huge jump. And you don't really think about it because all you're focusing on during that time is passing your boards. And you don't realize that once you pass your board and you get a job, you're like making big money and you're like, oh, shoot, like, you're like, how much does the world cost? I'm going to buy the world. Like,
That's actually a good point, you know, for I think that students don't know is that it's this money education where, like you mentioned, right? You thought
yeah.
20 bucks was a lot of money, and then all of a sudden you have all this money coming in, and you're like, oh, I don't really care about the extra guac.
Yeah.
What is the like how should students like prepare for that? You know, what's like the mindset? If you were to, is there like a educational course? Like what happens when you start making more money? How to
Yeah.
manage it?
I mean, I definitely don't think there's anything wrong with, spending, like make that extra splurge on yourself, knowing that you've worked so hard. It's funny because I was telling my sister the other day, I was like, this is something that registered in my head that kind of defined my success in a way that I don't think anyone would really relate to except my siblings. It was funny. I went to Subway. I was on my way to work. I got my sandwich and I was like, "Oh, like can you please add like a bag of chips and a drink?" And I just like casually grabbed a bottled beverage and she rang me up and he told us 20 bucks. I was like, "Okay, cool." But then I was like, when I was younger, we used to like search the internet or like clip coupons, and like my mom would be like, oh, like, if we're going to Subway, and I'd be like, okay, I'm on it, like I'm gonna go look for coupons, like $5 footlongs only, and like searching the internet and like, oh, does this coupon code work? And like, bringing our own drinks because it's like, oh, that drink is an extra like $3 and there's 5 of us, it's gonna add up. So it was never just like nonchalant. Like we were not a family that would order apps. Like we were like a entree and sometimes even share your entree with each other family. So the fact that I just kind of nonchalantly added a drink, grabbed whatever I wanted, and I was just like, oh, like okay, like I did that. I'm like, I can do this. Like, and it was so weird because it's so simple. It's just a drink and chips. But my sister was like, yeah, like she gets it because we lived through it and we both can see like how it was like 10 years ago versus like the life we're able to like provide for ourselves and our families, like essentially. So
I love it. Living the American dream right there.
but like how to manage that extra income, I think I was pretty smart about it. I immediately maxed out my 401k. Most hospitals offer a 401k. I wasn't paying rent because I'm living with my parents. The only thing I had was a car payment. So I made sure that I was definitely not spending more than I was making. Some hospitals allow you to allot a certain percent of your income to different accounts. So right away, I put 50% towards my savings. So every time I would get my check, I wouldn't even see that 50%. I would just go straight to my savings. And then I would divide like the rest into like different checking accounts. And I was like, okay, well, this checking account is for like future investments. And this other one is like, you're allowed to spend this the way you want. Like you work for your money. Like I'm all about like, you work hard, play hard. So there's nothing wrong with spending on yourself when you're working hard for as long as you're being reasonable.
Got it. Got it. As far as getting a job at a hospital, is it kind of the same as getting a normal job where you just go in, you apply, you submit an application, and then you get an interview, and then you start your first day, or is it different in a hospital?
So for nursing, it's a little different because you usually have to apply to new grad positions. And so new grad jobs in a hospitals are kind of structured internships where you have a preceptor, which is an experienced nurse that you stay with for X amount of months. Usually, like a fresh new grad with no work experience will have about 6 months of training. So during that 6 months, you're with a preceptor. So let's say your preceptor's name is John, and John works Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. For the next 6 months, you're working John's schedule because he's your preceptor or she's your preceptor. And they essentially teach you in the beginning. They apply what you've learned in nursing school in the real world. And slowly, month after month, they, let's say you're working in a med surg unit, which is a 5 patient, 1 nurse ratio in California. So they'll be like, okay, well, today I'm giving you 1 patient. Like 1 patient is all you. I'm not helping you. The next week, okay, you're taking on 2 patients. And then the third week, you just keep adding until you're able to essentially take care of 5 patients on your own. And so because it's such a like long and they invest a lot of money, like hospitals invest a lot of money into these programs because you're getting paid the same amount as you would as if you were not training. So for 6 months, you're just kind of draining money from the hospital because you're not helping them with their ratio. You're not taking an extra 5 patients. So when they have to staff their unit, you don't go into the equation. Like you're just like an extra person that's like, you're like dead weight essentially.
Dang.
So these programs are great because you get to really get a solid foundation. Because going to nursing school is hard and you learn a lot, yes, but it's nowhere near compared to like how it actually is to be a nurse. So these programs are really important. Some hospitals don't require you to go through these programs and they just start. I don't recommend it because you'll literally like get destroyed. um, but yeah, so you usually apply online, and if they like your resume or whatever, they'll usually do an interview for like a screening interview. And if they like you, then they'll schedule you for a panel interview. All depends on the unit. Some units have like 4 interviews. Like it's insane. Some units you meet with the manager once, and their manager's like, I like you, cool, like let us know when you can start. So all depends on the hospital and their program and their turnover rate. If they have a high turnover rate, they're usually hiring much quicker. But these programs, they tend to um, ask you to like stay like X amount of months. It's usually like a year to a year and a half that they want you to stay so that they're not like continuously losing money, like training you and then you quit. So
Right, 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 right.
yeah.
Got it. What about on the patient side? You know, what happens if a patient comes in and they don't have insurance? Should people avoid going to the hospital and just deal with it, or
Honestly, like I'm not sure what the back end of that is. The only time I've seen it is with homelessness. Like legally, if a patient comes into the hospital, like they have to like care for them. And I don't know how you bill someone who's homeless because what address do you bill it to, right? So in cases like that, if they don't have Medicare or Medicaid, I guess taxpayers are taking care of those patients.
got
That's why we pay taxes, and sometimes it's frustrating because you see like how certain people like don't take care of themselves in the best manner, or like they don't even care, like they're in the hospital but they're refusing everything, and it's like I think it's something absurd. Like ICU, I think every day like you're in the hospital, it costs like what, like I think it was like 18 to 20 grand like a night. And so the fact that patient is taking up that spot, isn't paying for it, refusing care, and like taxpayers kind of just have to like take that.
crazy.
Yeah, so it's frustrating, but then I mean, it's also it's a situation like some people just can't afford it, and I'm glad that they are able to get care. It's just it's sad when it's like you feel like they don't want it and like it's being taken advantage of.
Yeah, that was like one of the biggest things that I learned during my classes was like one of the biggest wastes was patients they don't follow like their medication. Like if a
Mhm.
doctor's like,
Yeah.
here's your medication, take it for 7 days, and the patient's like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, non-compliance is like an issue, definitely.
Absolutely. All right, let's move on to the next topic of the day, which is education.
All
Tell
right.
us, who were you in high school?
Who was I in high school? I was like pretty low key. I didn't have many friends in high school. I kind of just stuck with like my Muslim friends that I knew like outside of school. I did school like activities, and I was part of clubs, and I ran track, and I did cross country. So I like was involved, but at the end of the day, I think I was just more comfortable like with like people who understood like my family and like the dynamics of like being Middle Eastern. So I was friends with everyone at school, but not outside of school. It was more just like a little bit of tighter circle.
Got
I
it.
was not crazy about school. I honestly don't think I started taking high school seriously until like my junior, senior year when I was like, okay, where do I want to go to college? And I think my senior year, I really like shaped up. I started taking AP classes, and I was like more like inspired and motivated because I was like, I needed to succeed in life. I finally was like, okay, like it's serious. But right out of high school, I knew I wanted to be a nurse. I knew I wanted to be in healthcare, and I kind of explored medicine at first. I looked into it. I was interested in radiology, and then I looked more into radiology, and I think I did the math, and I was like, it's going to be at least 11 to 12 years like until I'm actually a practicing radiologist. And I was like, I'm all for education, but I was like, I'm not spending like 12 years of my life in school. Like, no, thank you. I was like, what else can I do? And then I came across nursing, and it pays well. Scheduling is flexible. You get to have a good work-life balance. And the schooling was like 4 to 5 years. So I decided to pursue that, but I went to community college actually out of high school. I was planning on going to San Francisco State, and I had like booked my classes and everything. And then they told me that, "Oh, well, if you wanna do the nursing program, just FYI, you have to reapply in 2 years, like, after you're done with your GEs," and I was like, "Wait, what?" I was like, "I have to apply again? I'm paying all this money and there's a chance I won't get in?" And they're like, "Yeah, like, it's a very, like, in-demand program, so we don't guarantee acceptance." And I was like, "Okay, I'm not wasting money on rent and tuition and all of this stuff." So I was like, "Let me just stay at home," and I went to community college in OC, and actually, like, I was getting paid to go to community college, like, um, through financial aid. Like, literally, my classes were free, and I was getting like a debit card that they would like put X amount of money on it like every semester, like through the government. It's all like income based and like my family. And so I was like, okay, I would be stupid to go waste money in SF. I was like, let me just stay here, knock 2 years out. But I took those 2 years pretty seriously because I always had friends that would go to community college and they'd be there for 2, 3, sometimes 4 years. And I was like, I don't want to just like get stuck. So I took summer classes my first year, like out of high school, and then again, and I kind of just like knocked out everything. And I applied to nursing school like a year and a half in. And within 2 years, I left community college and I started at University of San Francisco, their nursing program.
Nice, 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 nice. Are you originally from OC or
Yeah. So um, I was born in LA County, but grew up in OC.
got it? What
Yeah.
part of OC?
In Irvine.
Oh, nice, nice,
Yeah.
nice, nice. I'm actually staying in Irvine.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah,
Nice.
yeah. Right by the spectrum.
Clean, quiet city. Oh, nice.
Yeah. For the is it important for kids to go to college? I know you said you weren't taking school seriously in high school, and I have
Yeah.
tons of high school students who are like, "What's the point?"
Yeah. Is it important? I think it depends on what you wanna do. I know no 15 or 16-year-old really knows what they wanna do for the rest of their lives, but usually by, like, 16, 17, your personality is pretty developed, and if you have the personality of someone who wants to go into a profession that requires, obviously, education, if you wanna be a doctor, if you wanna be an engineer, you wanna be in the healthcare, like, yes, it's important, obviously, but if you have, like, a business mind where you're always thinking of like, oh, well, this is an item people buy. How can I like make this item better or cheaper? And like what ways maybe I could advertise this better and, turn it into something that it's not. So if you have that type of personality where you're always like looking for ways to like non-traditional ways of making money, I guess, where there isn't a clear path and you have more of that creative businessy like mind, then I wouldn't say it's like absolutely necessary. Like I think in this country it's kind of like overrated and like how much it costs. And you have to think about it like what's your ROI on this experience? Like is you getting your master's, is the ROI on that worth it? Like you're putting down, I think business, like an MBA's costs around 100K. Like, all right, you're gonna put 100K into this. Are you gonna get at least double that like out of it? So I know it's hard to have that mindset when you're younger because you don't really understand like the concept of like return.
Right.
But I think if you don't know, then the safer option is to just do it and figure it out because having options is better than not having options. And you don't want to be in a situation where you're just like, okay, well, I had the option to do this and I chose not to. I think always being in control of like scenarios is the better outcome rather than leaving it up to chance. I'm a very type A person. So like for example, when people are planning their life out and they're like, "Oh, then I'm going to get married and have 3 kids." And I'm just like, "Okay, well like that's not something in your control. So why are we planning this? Like let's plan what we can control and then see what gets thrown in. Like give yourself like a foundation and something to rely on, and that should always be you. It shouldn't be your mom, it shouldn't be your dad, it shouldn't be your brother, your sister, or a guy or a girl. You should always rely on yourself at the end of the day. So if you're making decisions where you're continuously relying on yourself and you're taking ownership and responsibility for your quality of life, then do it. If that's not going to school, but you have a plan, then do it. But if you want to go to school, you want something more clear cut, just do it.
Got it. Did your parents ever pressure you?
Like for school?
Education Yeah, like, education-wise, like, "Why aren't you taking it seriously?" You
Yeah.
know?
Honestly, no, never. Like, my parents didn't even know how to access my grades in high school. I was checking my own grades. I was going to office hours on my own. Um, if I did bad on a test, I would go and ask, like, "Is there extra credit?" Like, that was always me. Like, my parents never knew when I had exams, projects. Like, they were very uninvolved. It's just also my personality was an easygoing kid in the sense where they didn't have to worry about that because I worried about it versus my brother. Very different experience for them. Like, they had to keep checking his grades. If he wasn't doing well, they were on him. And my mom was like, I'm so like, she's like, oh, like, I don't know what to do. Like, he doesn't take it seriously. I'm like, Mom, it's not that he doesn't take it seriously. It's that you had me and like my sister, and we were like, we kind of just did things on our own. And I was like, you expected that out of him too, which is not fair to him because, he was just being himself. And so she's like, oh my God, the world's ending. I have to, like, he doesn't go to office hours. I'm like, it's okay. Like, if you have to push him, like, you had two easy kids. Let's not be like stingy. Like, you can have a third little troubled one, but I was like, at the end of the day, like, he has a good head on his shoulders. You support him, and he has us. And my thing for, like, he's a lot younger than me. He's 9 years younger than me.
Oh, wow.
So he's kind of like the baby of the family. And my thing for him is like, yeah, I want you to experience life on your own and make your own mistakes. But like, you have me and your sister, and we both made plenty of mistakes. So, like, spend your life making your mistakes. Don't make our mistakes. Like, we made our mistakes and we can share those lessons with you. There's no reason for you to like waste your time making the same mistakes. So he has us as a resource. And I always tell him, like, you have us. We went through it. Like, use us. Like, we're free resources. I know we knew what we were doing. Like, now we figured it out. And now you have us. So,
What are the top 3 mistakes that you made in your life that you want your brother or any younger kid to listen to?
um, I think I wish I developed better habits early on. If I had developed like stronger, like, if I took school more seriously, I think when I was younger, it would have helped me. I mean, given like I still did really well in college, but and I always tell him, like, he's like, "Oh, well, I got this grade and I did good on the test," but he's like, "I didn't submit the homework assignment because I was like, I didn't feel like doing it." And I'm like, at the end of the day, my head is like, okay, your grades don't necessarily matter in high school if you're going to community college, but I never told him that. He actually graduated high school recently. But the habits do follow. So if you have a 2.0 GPA graduating, there's a reason you have a 2.0 GPA, and when you start college, you're going to continue the habit that got you that 2.0, and you don't want a 2.0 in college because you're not going to get to transfer out with a 2.0, like if you want to go to UCLA, like. And the thing that sucks is, like, they realize this when it's too late. So it's like,
Mm.
that's why I'm like, mess around in high school and stuff, but like, you need to take community college like serious because that transcript will follow you. And I took it seriously, and I had like a decent GPA. Like, I think when I applied, like, I had options. Um, and so that was one thing I wish that I took a little bit seriously. Probably would have made it a little easier. Another
Better.
thing I wish I knew is kind of enjoy your time. I saw how my parents struggled a lot growing up, especially financially. And it kind of made my mission in life was like, don't struggle financially. I'm like, I'm going to do everything in my power. Like, why do you want to be a nurse? Typical response is like, oh, I want to help people. Definitely want to help people. But I was like, I also want to, like, not worry about like my rent. So I want to have job security. So I took certain things really seriously where I was like, no, if I don't, like, it was so funny. I think I almost got an A minus in one of my nursing classes. And I was like, if I don't graduate with a 4.0, it's all worth nothing. I was like, this whole experience, like, why did I do this? Like, if I have one A minus, my GPA is ruined. And I was like distraught. I'm I'm crazy, and I ended up like not getting an A minus, and I was like proud of myself, yes, but like the stress that I put myself under to get that 4.0 was unnecessary. And I feel like there was definitely parts of living in San Francisco that I could have enjoyed, but I didn't enjoy because I was like study, 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 study. So enjoy life, don't take it too seriously. And a third thing, um, for me, I have a hard time delegating. I'm because I like I said, I'm type A. So I do everything myself. If I I know I'm not gonna like something if someone else does it in their way. So I tend to just be like, you know what, don't worry, I'll take care of it. And I like overcommit myself, so I'm spread very thin. So my advice would be like just stay in your lane and do the things that really matter yourselves. But if it's like small things in life, they don't work out exactly how you want it, it's okay. It's probably
Got
at
it.
the end of the day only you that's gonna notice these things. So think bigger picture.
Love that. Okay. So better habits, enjoy life, and think bigger picture.
Yeah.
I love it. All right, let's move on to the last topic of the day, which is love. Tell us, what is love?
What is love? It's a little new to me. I actually was someone who didn't really take relationships that seriously. Like in high school, college was not on my radar. I was so focused on school and becoming successful. And I think every day I would tell myself, I want to be successful because I would never want to rely on a man. If I ever get in a relationship and I get married, I want to be able to still take care of myself. I'm going to marry someone because I love them, not because I need their support. So it just wasn't on my radar, and I didn't really entertain the idea of it until I was serious, like looking, okay, like this relationship, I want it to lead to something serious for like marriage. Um, but yeah, I think once I started working and I kind of started having my own steady income, and I went and traveled a lot on my own. I went to Turkey for 3 weeks on my own. I traveled to Japan for 2 weeks on my own. Like I would rent a car and like drive across like state. I'd go on hiking trips on the weekend by myself. Like I was like very comfortable with my independence and being alone. So once I was like, okay, like I don't have to worry about taking care of myself. I know I'm capable of taking care of myself. I kind of opened up the possibility. And yeah, I'm actually engaged now.
Love it. How'd you guys meet?
How did we meet? So we've actually known each other for a while, like through the community. And I knew his sister and I knew his family. And I always had a little crush on him, but he didn't really see that. And it was funny because when I was living in San Francisco, he was working in San Francisco. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with Ramadan. It's like a month where Muslims fast.
Yes.
So it was my first Ramadan away from home, and I had some other Muslim friends um, in San Francisco. So I like hosted like a small iftar, which is when we break our fast during Ramadan. And I had invited him. I was like, "Hey, a couple of people are coming. Like, come through. I know that it's your first Ramadan away from home too." And he actually came, and it's funny because he worked for a company, and I would always see this company's logos like in the city, and I would take photos and like send it to him and I'd be like, LOL, look what I saw. And he would just be like, nice. Okay, cool. Like very small. Like I was like, all right, like clearly he doesn't think of me that way. So I kind of got over it. I was like, whatever. Like I was like, that's a girl's way of shooting her shot, FYI. That is a girl shooting her shot. So if a girl does that, and she's not saying, "Hey, let's go out," it's still shooting her shot. So, guys, read between the lines.
If a
Um,
girl's texting you guys, get a hint.
that's all she needs to do is text you. And then I moved back actually during COVID. I was never planning on moving back to OC because the pay in the Bay Area for an RN starting is like crazy stupid. It's like I think listings were going for $76 an hour, and this was 2 years ago. So it's probably, like, higher now, and this is starting. So I
Wow.
was like, "I'm not going to OC." OC was half of that. But then COVID hit, I moved back home. My last semester of nursing school was, um, what was it? Zoom University. And then I got a job here in LA, and I just started working, and he had moved back too, and he started working remote, and so we kinda, like, um that's how we kinda connected, but what instigated it, honestly, I downloaded Hinge, and I was on the app for an hour, and it was actually really funny because I was at work, and my coworker was, like, on my Hinge swiping, and then she was like, "Oh
Delegation.
my god, look at this guy. He's so your type." And I was like I gave her, like, the criteria, and she's like, "He meets all your criteria." And I look at the photo, and it was him, and I was like, "Oh my god, no, 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 no." I was like, "I've shot my shot. That's so embarrassing. You're not gonna send it." And she's like, "Please, please, please. What's the worst thing he can say? No." And I was like, "You know what? Like, whatever." So she sends it, and I realized, "Oh my god, I'm working nights. It's 3 a.m. He's gonna think I'm on Hinge at 3 in the morning." And I was like, "This is so awkward." And literally, like, 30 minutes later, he, like, responded. And I was like, "Okay, I know why I'm on Hinge at 3. Why are you on Hinge at 3?" But it was so funny because it was, like, the first hour I had downloaded the app, and, I mean, we talked on it for, like, 5 minutes, and he was like, "Wait, you know, I have your number. Why don't I just text you?" And I'm like, "Yeah, you have my number. Why don't you just text me?" And yeah, like the rest was history. And we got comfortable like with each other really quickly because I knew his parents, I knew his sister, I knew his brother, and like his family was familiar with my family. And I had worked on like a nonprofit project with his sister like a few months before that. So it all went well, and now we are getting married in a month. Yeah.
Wow. Congratulations. I love that. What is growing up, as you mentioned, you're from immigrant parents. Did your mom and dad show you like typical, lovey dovey? Like, did they tell you they
Oh,
love you, that or?
I don't. Okay, amongst each other, not really. Like there was no like showing of affection. When I told my mom, I'm like, "Oh, I realized like you don't really like say that stuff." She was like, "Yeah, I do." So I don't know. My perception is that not really. I think Middle Eastern households are a little bit more of tough love, especially having like immigrant parents where they're like still used to the way things are like communicated back home. So it's a very different experience. Like they're still like super compassionate and they show their love in like interesting ways. You just kind of have to figure out like you have to like it's like Morse code. You have to like break it and like
Personal story? What's an interesting way your parents show love to you?
an interesting way my parents show love to me. Let's see. Um my mom, she tends to I'm trying to think. I'm trying. Why is this so hard for me to answer?
There's that blockage. She doesn't.
She really does, but wow, I'm trying to think. Okay,
or
my
the
mom's way of showing love is like she will be at a store and like she sees something that I might like and she comes home and she's like, "Oh, look, I got you this." And like I think that's how she shows her love. But then I think she gets really upset when you're like, "Oh, I don't like it." And it's just like a catastrophe in her head. It's like, wow, I did this amazing thing. And then you don't realize, like, oh, that was kind of mean of me to say. Like, she saw it, like, that's her love language is like, acts of service and like gift giving and not necessarily words of affirmation. Um, but I think, like, just kind of seeing the struggle. And at the end of the day, like, they did come from their home country where their family was, where their siblings were and their friends, to a country where they knew no one, barely spoke the language. And I mean, imagine doing that. Like in today's society, people are all about like, oh, my comfort and my comfort zone. Like that's definitely something out of your comfort zone, like for anybody. So the whole intent of that is to provide us with better opportunity because they knew essentially back home, like especially if you're a female, like there's not much opportunity. And thank God they did because
In Syria, right?
Syria, yeah, because in like 2015 when like the war started in Syria, um that kind of destroyed all like potential opportunity for anyone, not just females, but like the economy was shot. Like the only way you can be successful is by like leaving. Like there's no future in Syria anymore for like our generation because it's everything has to be built back up, and like the economy sucks and the government sucks. And like that's how I know that people like my uncle, he came from Syria like when the war started, and he was super successful in Syria. He had like 3 shops, he was a business owner. They were doing great. They had factories and everything stopped and he came here with nothing. And now he's like, he's built his way back up and he took that like business experience with him. So I think that in itself kind of is very inspiring, like to be a child of that and to know that like we kind of dismiss it because we're like, oh, it is what it is. Like I didn't ask to be born here. But you know, it's like thank God we were born here because we have like access to education and opportunity. And it's funny because back home when we visit, they'll ask me, oh, so what do you do for a living? And I'll be like, oh, I'm a nurse. But like a nurse in the middle, like in Syria, is not seen as a very like classy profession. It's kind of like you go to a training for a month and you're a nurse in Syria. So it's very different here. And then they're all like, "Oh, like you're a nurse," and they're kind of like off put by it. And I'm like, "Okay," well, I was like, "I don't think they know how much nurses make." Like, I was like, "I'm just gonna keep that to myself."
You don't
But
know we make $70 an hour over here.
I know. So those opportunities I would have never had. And so that in itself, it kind of makes me and my siblings like when we're thinking about our goals and aspirations, of course we want to be successful and buy nice things and enjoy our lives, but we're always thinking like, okay, and eventually like we want to like buy a house for our parents. Like it's always on our radar. It's never like, oh well, that's on them and like we do us. Like we're not responsible. Like we still claim very strong responsibility to like taking care of them when they get older as well. I think it's also a cultural thing. Like you don't put your mom in a home, you don't put your dad in a home and like deuce out. Like you have to like take care of them. And it's supposed to be seen as more like of a privilege. Like they took care of you and then you come full circle and take care of them. So
Absolutely. I love
yeah.
that. Growing up, just kind of final questions. What was has your relationship changed with your parents? Has it gotten better, gotten worse, or communication wise? Were you guys always super tight, or
I think what's interesting is that like let's say my mom was to get in an argument with my dad when I was younger, I'd be like, "Oh mom, like you're being so hard on him. Like, he didn't know any better. Like be nicer to dad." And then now that I'm older, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, like I see exactly why she reacted that way." And like vice versa, like same thing with my dad. Um I think what's crazy is that you're usually like one parent. You're usually either like your mom or like your dad. And so when I reflect on my personality, I'm like, oh my God, I'm just like my mom. And I look at my sister, I'm like, oh my God, she's just like dad. So I think it makes you change like how you perceive them because you start to see yourself in them.
I see.
And I think like there's certain situations where it's frustrating because it's like I set like I have these my own idea of like expectations of like a parental role and what a parent should and shouldn't do. And sometimes like those expectations are not met and I get frustrated. I'm like, ugh, like this is something he should do, or ugh, like my mom should be doing this. And I'm like, why am I assuming like why am I applying other people's expectations onto like my family? Like every family's different and I don't think it's fair to them. Because at the end of the day, like my dad is one of the nicest people you'll ever meet. And like my mom, like she's like intense, but she loves even more intensely. Like If she loves you, she loves you. So it's like when you take a step back and you're like, damn, I kind of feel bad the way I talked to them. Like, I wish I didn't talk to him like that. Or I wish I hugged my mom a little bit tighter before I drove to work. It's just, navigating a Middle Eastern household is definitely like, it's like parkour.
I love that. I love that. Well, thank you for sharing. Any last words for the kids? Last two life tips?
Last two life tips. Enjoy your life, but if you see your life a certain way and you don't like how it is, you can easily change that. It's just a matter of you making that call. And if you're serious about things and you take them seriously, like, you will succeed. I always told my friends, like, people, it is obviously hard, school's hard, and getting an A in whatever class is going to be hard. It's not going to be easy. But if you prioritize that and you put in the time to study, like, it will happen. And you can apply that to anything in life. Of course, unexpected things happen, but it all comes down to priorities. Like, if you prioritize having fun versus getting good grades, like, okay, that's sure, like, have fun and enjoy your life. Just know, like, having a hard time in school and that kind of hardness in the sense of like stress and studying, you'll get the satisfaction later on in life when your life is easier. So that's what I always tell my brother. Like, I know you want to go out with your friends and I know they're all having fun, but like, come on, like, if think about it, if you do good, I promise you, like, you will enjoy your life later on. I think it hit him when he saw like that I bought my own car. He was like, "Wow, like, you can afford this?" And I was like, "Yeah, dude." I was like, "I didn't go out in college. Like, I had friends, but I wasn't like, I was literally in my books. Like, I would take my freaking micro textbook to Thanksgiving dinner." And I was like, "But listen, now I get to," I was like, "I went to Japan and I paid for the whole trip myself." And I'm like, "You can do that too. You just have to take school seriously." I'm like, work hard, play hard. I promise you, your life is hard now. It'll be easier later because the alternative is not fun.
Got it. I love
Yeah.
that. I love that. All right. Well, that about wraps it up for us. Before I forget, if you guys are going through tough times, you guys need someone to talk to, you have suicidal thoughts, feel free to text home to 741-741. That is a national hotline. Someone will be there to talk to you 24/7, 365. And then all I ask is that you're feeling generous, that you do consider supporting the community hotline. And we will catch you guys next time. See you later.
Bye.